There are a number of stories that we've all heard about Inverclyde, such as it being a shipbuilding town, that it was heavily bombed during the Blitz, it was the birthplace of James Watt, and so on. But some stories about the amazing individuals of Inverclyde are less known. In fact, most people haven't even heard of some of Inverclyde's influential women. So let's change that. A young Greenock lass returns to the UK after completing a research scholarship in America. It's 1914, the early years of the First World War, when Agnes Bothwick, 25, lands back on home soil. By 1916, she's sent to Georgetown by Paisley to work as a forewoman on the construction of a munitions factory. Despite achieving an honours in English from Glasgow University and then going on to study in America, Agnes and 24 fellow women carry out mainly janitorial tasks in the factory. However, within 2 months, she's promoted to assistant works manager, and eventually she drops the assistant from that title. By the end of 1916, the original 24 workers had increased to 4,000 girls in Agnes's charge. She was later transferred to a larger factory in April 1917 as a joint manager with a male official, and in September became sole manager there. The number of women employed at Georgetown rose to as many as 14,000 before the end of the war, and Agnes was in charge of more than half that. The entire work of the factory was described as danger work. Agnes even said herself, "Until I came away from the factory, I hadn't realised how heavy and how unending the responsibility was." Agnes was a true champion in these times, and her workforce provided an excellent example of women competing at the same work as men, which in that time was no small feat. The next story is of a woman who rose up through the ranks to help create one of our nation's most important services. Muriel Ritson was born in 1885 in Gourock. She went to Greenock Academy and then a finishing school in Germany. She became a social worker and rent collector in Glasgow. Thus she became familiar with the issues of health in the west of Scotland. She went on to work on many committees and boards discussing health, and was eventually appointed the Scottish Controller of Ministry of National Insurance, receiving the CBE in 1936. Perhaps her most notable accomplishment was being appointed Scottish representative on the Beveridge Committee for the Department of Health. From this committee, the National Health Service was formed. Let's jump back to 1863, when Elizabeth Taylor Gilchrist has just been born here in Greenock. Elizabeth works hard through school, and eventually she goes on to earn a place at Edinburgh University studying medicine. In 1891, she was awarded the most successful student at the Edinburgh School of Medicine for Women. Then, 3 years later, in 1894, she became a doctor and eventually returned to Greenock as a GP. Dedicating herself to aiding others in need, she served at multiple barracks in World War I, attending to both soldiers and their families. She then volunteered to the War Office as a doctor and served in Malta and Salonika. She never worried about putting herself at risk if it meant she would be able to help others. Okay, last one for today. Agnes Curran. She didn't serve in the war or travel the world. She was born in Greenock and worked as a deputy matron at Ravenscraig Hospital. Agnes was a nurse for 22 years and then transferred to the prison service. She was appointed the first female governor of an all-male prison in the country. This was a groundbreaking step forward for women, but her work didn't stop there. She was awarded an MBE and spoke openly about mental health issues. She was involved with many charitable groups, including the Inverclyde Association for Mental Health. Truly, she was a trailblazer for women in work, and that work was all about helping others and making sure no one was overlooked. Okay, I think that'll do for today. But we should always remember the women that helped pave the way for us. The women we mentioned today are just some of the many examples of influential women from Inverclyde. Our forebears have done some incredible things, but that doesn't mean there isn't some space still for you to make your mark.